really no thoughts really needed. Find what resonates for you. So today we're going to explore a little bit about the halls of Amenti. This has been our restoration plan for Earth and for Tara. And this restoration plan went into place about 560 million years ago. And we're going to visit some timelines before then. We're going to visit some timelines about the angelic fall, just to kind of get a little bit of a precursor where a lot of this originated, the fall of the angelics, the beginning of the Nephilim races, and some of this energy that has actually infiltrated into our timeline. So the reason why we revisit this a lot is mainly because history, if you will look at it that way, has been repeating itself over and over and over again. And as we acknowledge that history has been repeating itself, we can start to unplug ourselves a little bit more from the day-to-day things. And I know each of you here in the Sacred Circle has been doing that. And I want to just honor that with each and every one of you, the path and the journey that you've been in. And they're inviting us right now to just turn around in your life and look backwards. And if you just look back all the way to the very birth of this very lifetime and just celebrate you for a moment, just celebrate you, acknowledge you, acknowledge what an amazing job that you've done being in this very moment right now, all that you have been through, all that you have awakened to, and who you be right now. And the most important thing is to remember that no matter what you've gone through, what has happened in your life, you made it through it. You made it through it. And in the end, when you think about all of it, all of the stuff that felt so important in the moment is gone now, because there's a new resonance to what feels so important. So they're inviting us to remember that. Take moments to not only celebrate who you be, but also to have those levels of awareness that many of the challenges that seemed like they were going to be the end of the world when they were happening in the past, that when you look at them now, that they were just a blip. And this is what is going to allow us to step into new levels of consciousness, and also to be able to embrace the quickening of the restoration within our blueprint and our DNA that is happening in this very moment. Because in the end, what we want to do is remember that it's where our heart is now. What level of consciousness are we aligning to now? What future are we creating now? Because for many of you, you are going to find that you have been time travelers and have been working on this backwards and forwards in time for many, many, many millennia of years. So let's just remember where we anchor with and how beautiful this is. So let's go ahead and start with the halls of Amenti. We want to kind of just revisit a little bit about what are stargates, why are stargates so important, where are stargates, because this is something we talk about quite a bit. But when we go into our understanding of scalar mechanics, universal mechanics, and how our sacred sciences and the science, if you will, of the universe. So natural law, divine law, the law of the universe is operating. It operates on a very sacred mathematical level. It operates on a very sacred geometry level. And therefore, everything works within harmonies, sequences, and cycles. So stargates really are nodes and places within our universal body, the greater galactic body, if you will, that are nodal points that connect. They allow access to energy through dimensional frequency bands and also to different locations within the bodies of our universe. So you could almost think of them as arterial ways, or we could always kind of metaphor back to our body and how maybe even our life blood flows through our body, through channels, through gateways, and it makes its way to all these centers and portals. So when we think about that, the halls of Amenti are very much tied into how we would work with a Stargate. And as you look here, I just want to bring some energy into here, is into the 5th Stargate here. We're going to see Machu Picchu and the Vatican. And on a galactic level, this connects with Maldek. And on a universal level, this connects with the Pleiades and Alcyone. So the reason why I'm focusing on this one today, just as an example, is because we're going to be talking primarily about Tara in the 2nd harmonic universe and the fall of Tara, of which our solar system has become the body of. So we've talked a little bit about Tara in the 2nd harmonic universe is very connected with Alcyone in the Pleiades. And when the fall of Tara happened, much of the debris that was sucked into the sun at that fall became all of the galactic here, all of the galactic stargates, which would be Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Maldek, Jupiter, Saturn, all of these. But Maldek has also kind of gone through a similar fate that Tara went through in the 2nd harmonic universe, because it too was exploded. And it is what is creating our asteroid belt within our solar system. So you can feel that energy within there. And if you imagine it overlaying down even one more level, that we have the energy here with Machu Picchu and the Vatican, and a lot of the timelines and energy that has happened within those specific Stargate places within there. Now, if you imagine if you overlaid all of these, that Stargates allow you to move not only from location to location, but the body of the universe is replicating itself. So even though we are here within the solar system, our higher body is held within all these other constellations in the bigger body of the universe, within Orion and Epsilon and Alpha Centauri, Nibiru, Pleiades, Sirius system, Arcturus, Andromeda, Lyra. All of these places are just our larger body. So these are part of the significant cycles that it is important for us to pay attention to our own astrology, our cycles, our stargates, where we've come through, because this is also how we restore and also how we travel through the universe. So I just want to touch on that at another level, because I feel as though we're really starting to embrace the ability to use these stargates and our connection with each of them, because these also begin to overlay over our own physical body. So here's how stargates and portals also really work. I want to touch into Polaris and the North Star. Currently, Polaris is what we call our North Star. The reason why it is called our North Star, and I love this picture here, is because basically, if you look up on the Earth's axis, we are spinning around it. Now, the really cool thing about it is our North Star changes. It changes through about a almost 26,000 year cycle. It's 25,800 year cycle. Our North Star will change. So in about 13,000 years, Lyra is going to be our North Star. And then in about 23,000 years, Thuban, within the constellation of Draco, the dragon, will once again become our North Star. So there are significant timelines in history where our North Star was aligned to different constellations. So again, currently it's connected to Polaris in Ursa Minor, which is the Little Dipper. but it's going to be connected again within the Lyra constellation. And prior, it was connected to Draco in Thuban. So these are the dragon lineages and dragon beings. Now, as you kind of understand that, now let's look at this as a Stargate or a portal. When different constellations take the position of our North Star, our center of our spin, if you will, they are having access to one of the sacred chakras of the planet. So therefore, it is generally the direct lineage that is having the most influence on our planetary sphere. So if you look through history lines, and again, this is only about a 26,000 year cycle. So this happens over and over and over again, our connections with Lyra, with Polaris, with Thuban, and there's another one. I apologize, I didn't write it. But these cycles repeatedly go through. And as we connect with each of these are the different influences that have higher vibrational access to our planetary sphere through the sacred chakras of our planetary body. So as you understand this, you can start to see some of the levels of how alignments work, how different timelines give us the ability to connect with different planets, different places. And so therefore, when we start to look at things like we're going to do today, which is looking at timelines that span millions of years, we're going to see the multitude of cycles that we've gone through the restoration plan of rehabilitating this particular solar system and primarily first harmonic universe. So 560 million years ago, many of the ET and metaterrestrial races combined their genetics and their energetic makeup together to create a master race of beings that would serve as guardians of planet Terra. So Terra is again in the second harmonic universe, fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensional spheres, if you want to look at it this way. So these ET races that were involved with this, basically, we're doing this specifically to create a new master race or an angelic race of beings that was going to be able to assist future falls that they knew were going to happen within the second harmonic universe and Tara specifically. So we're going to play around a little bit. I want to actually read a bunch of stuff for you guys today about this energy. So let's just play for a moment just to start to get to know who we're talking about. So we have Earth here, which is in the first harmonic universe, and this is after the fall of Tara. And in the second harmonic universe, we're going to have primarily a lot of connection with the Syrian Council. And I'm going to list the other groups that were connected with them. And these are the beings in the second harmonic universe that were appointed as directors and overseers of the Tyranniseum project. So we're looking at a Syrian council that is in the second harmonic universe. So beings vibrating fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional, primarily sixth dimensional frequency of beings that were overseers of different projects and seeded races on Tara. Now, the Syrian Council was actually appointed by a race of Elohim who were created by Lyrans. And these were in the third harmonic universe. So we're talking dimension, seventh dimension, eighth dimension, ninth dimensional beings. We're going to look at Lyran races today as beings who were vibrating in the fourth harmonic universe, and we're also looking at metaterrestrial races who were vibrating up into the fifth harmonic universe, and some were ultra-terrestrial beings that were working together even from what I would call the mother galaxy or the next harmonic universe, sixth harmonic universe up. So just to kind of get a perspective that if you look at all of these even though we see kind of the universe as expanded out, we are still a micro and a macro. All of the dimensions are existing simultaneously within each other, but primarily at this time, 560 million years ago, we did not have life, or we were not existing in any kind of form within the first harmonic universe. That did not happen until the fall and the wars of Tara. So let's talk a little bit about who are these metaterrestrials. So when we've talked about the three founder flames, the primal light and sound fields, so these are the three eternal gestalts of consciousness projected by the yanas from the higher universe up, who form the three primal light fields of the Ki, Ra, Sha. So these are dimensions 13, 14, and 15 of our 15-dimensional time matrix. And they are antimatter, spherical, thermoplasmic consciousness, light radiation fields. It's a mouthful, but this is really, again, signifying that even though we might see pretty colors out as we look through telescopes in the universe, we are really looking at incredibly high vibrational dimensional beings of consciousness. Our universe is fully and completely alive, just as alive as the breath that we are breathing is its own. It's another field of consciousness. We can start to interact with all that is, because we are part of the all. So as the fields of the Ki Rasha started entering into manifestation, a form of light radiation, these beings were also called the Rishi, the solar Rishi, the metaterrestrials, or collectively we call them the three founder races of consciousness of our universal family and or the universal trinity. So when we talk about the tri-founder flames, we are talking about something that is almost inconceivable for us to think about, but it's important for us to know about them, because this energy isn't just some pretty energy that we've been dealing with. This has had specific counseling, advisory, influence into how our genetics within our body has been designed. Our actual genomes and codes of our body come from these very rays of energy. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Lyran Wars. Now, the Lyran Wars, I'm going to just tap into another area here really quick. But the Lyran Wars really started a long time ago with the founder races. So when we talk about the founder races, we're talking about the blue ray, the gold ray, and the amethyst ray. We're talking about the Emerald Order, the Gold Order, and the Amethyst Order, and the different races of beings that started to get seeded into the Lyra constellation, the cradle of Lyra. Now, throughout the long history of the founder race, the Angelic Wars started about 250 to 270 billion years ago. So what was happening was the Emerald Order, Elohai Elohim, so the feline humanids, and the Gold Order, Seraphi Seraphim, so the Ceres. We're going to get really familiar with the Seraphim lineage, the Ceres, the avian humanoid form, because this is a huge energy that has been utilized genetically and as a consciousness to also not only rehabilitate a lot of the digression in the genetics throughout the universe, but also is one of the huge consciousnesses that is part of the halls of Amenti. So we have these founder races. We also have the Athean, the Mantis, and Amethyst Order, Braha Rama, Inu Cetacean, and the Pegasi winged horse deer races that were working together to help restore the Stargates 11 and 12. So again, we're talking about the 11th Stargate, the 12th Stargate within Lyra, so Aramatena and Avion. And what was happening that following the destruction of the Lyra, Aramatena, and the Stargate 12, the Emerald Order Branau the Elohai Elohim, so the feline humanoid races, became appointed by the Yana collectives from beyond our time matrix, so the mother galaxy, to help serve as the primary universal Templar security team. So this was really the beginning of starting to create races in order to help restore lineages. And this started long ago. So we're talking 250 billion years ago, where these angelic wars, where the wars over the Lyran stargates started. Now from these wars, this is where we start to see the digression of the Adedicron beings, so some of the digressive reptilian beings who started to mix with the Anu. We're looking at some of the Seraphi Anu families that started to go into digression. And when we say digression, what was really starting to happen was many of these races were starting to interbreed with each other. And so mixing of certain genetics started to create a deterioration within the gene codes within the body. And when the gene codes get digressed, then you can have lower frequencies that can start to enter within the consciousness and the vibrational frequencies, such as narcissistic tendencies, such as anger or aggression, wanting to start to take for oneself. So basically, in a nutshell, we're looking at digression creates the energy to start moving outside of the law of one thinking, outside of compassion, outside of love, and outside of consciousness. So we're just going to kind of look at it that way for a moment, that with this digression, these angelic wars between the fallen Anu Elohim, the Anu aquatic apes and the bipedal dolphin people, and the fallen seraphim insects, started to create Omicron dragon moth beings, Odedicron lizard races, and many of these beings started to just begin to want to pillage and take things throughout the universe. So we've talked quite a bit about a lot of that history. I'm not going to get into that too much, but let me just move over here. So within this time, what started to happen is the Elohai Elohim were working together with the metaterrestrial beings. As they began to work with the metaterrestrial beings, they started to work with other races. And let me just kind of digress a little bit. The guides are coming in for me to shift focus for a minute. So let me just read this. The Lyran Wars are the very first seeded race of Antichrist conflict recorded in the universal time matrix, in which the black hole entities intended to conquer the entire Milky Way system. This resulted in the first galactic war, intended as a rebellion over the Lyrans, and created over the Lyran's creation of the 12D Christos template human seedings that first began on planet Tara. This is the original timeline in the Solar Logos Avatar Matrix, where the first electronic wars and time rips were used as genocidal campaign for committing the first Christos human holocaust, when the neighboring black hole entities attacked the royal houses and destroyed the Lyran gates in order to sever the Milky Way matrix from its mother universe, Andromeda. So this is just a beautiful way for us to see how, as these geomantic wars really started to happen, it created tears and rips within our universe. This is also leading us to have a better understanding when we hear about some races that have infiltrated this universe from other universes that weren't meant to be here, that have created some of what we might call the nanites or the AI infiltration, or these negative black hole energy that has been siphoning the energy from this universe, we can see how it's kind of a parasitic energy that was able to enter in through, many times it comes through these black holes and these rips and these tears. So whenever the body gets destructed in any shape or way, it's no different than if you get a cut on your arm. If you do not keep that cut clean, it has a higher ability to now become infected, to get potentially worse than it was, and to allow outside things into your sacred body that aren't meant to be in there, such as parasites, bacteria, viruses, and things like that. So our universal body is no different. So we're going to kind of start to look here at the Orifim race. So the Lyrans, working together with the Metaterrestrials, created the Elohim race, which is an angelic feline race of beings who were, again, the guardians of the Syrian Council, who was overseeing these angelic seedings and races that were primarily happening on Tara, so in the second harmonic universe. So let's kind of look at who some of these are. As they worked together, the Elohim then began to create a new race of beings called the Orifim. The Orifim are a hybrid. They are a hybrid race of beings from Lyra Sirius, so the Sirius A system, which is the Anuhazi. Now, Anuhazi lineage comes from the Elohai Emerald Order feline humanoid. So each race from a higher dimension, as it steps down in frequency, it takes more of a physical form. And so the Elohai stepped down, and in the Lyra Sirius A area, a new kind of form was taken for them, which you could refer to as the Anuhazi. So the Anuhazi are one of the genetics that were added to the Orifim lineage. In Sirius B, the Azurite Yoni shared their genetics, and they are a hybrid or a mixed race being that is holding the Elohai feline as well, the Seraphai avian humanoid, and the Braharama Inu cetacean form. So they are a blended race in Sirius B, a blended race of all three founder flames. The emerald, so the blue flame, the gold flame, and the amethyst. All three are a part of the Sirius B lineage. And so they donated their genetics to the Orifim. And then the next lineage that also added to this is the Pleiadian Ceres being. And this is a harmonic 2 Seraphai avian humanoid. So all of these beings shared genetics. When we started to look at a lot of the angelic races that shared into this new project that was going to help create the restoration plan, you're looking at a lot of energy from the Pleiadian energy, the Sirius A, Sirius B, and Lyra energy specifically, but I'm going to tie you into a bunch of other planets that have been involved in this. So the Orifim were seeded 568 million years ago on Harmonic Universe 1. So, or sorry, Harmonic Universe 3. So the Orifim, which is very angelic in stature and nature, they were seeded on the Gaian timeline. So the third harmonic universe, the Gaian timeline. And I want to actually read something to you to actually describe a little bit about what they looked like. So the original Lyran Syrian Pleiadian Orifim prototype was a thin being. They were 12 to 20 feet tall. They were androgynous, feline, avian, humanoid, land and water mammal. They were breatharians, so they didn't eat. They drew in their nourishment directly from the atmosphere in which it was placed. The original Orifim have translucent, deep tan or powdered white to pale blue skin, elongated skulls, petite, childlike facial features. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever had this experience going through feeling other bodies. But have you ever had an experience where you felt your hand with 6 fingers? Because the Orifim lineage had 6 fingers and 6 toes, no ears or small cat-like ears on the side of the head, and some had more feline features to them. So it's kind of going to go into some of them. Some of the Orifim, so each of the Orifim kind of had a little bit of a different feature, because look at all of the different races that were contributing to the Orifim lineage. So many of them had feline-like resemblances. Some Orifim had a pure white head of hair resembling long, soft fur. Others were bald or had soft, white, feathered skulls. They all had hairless body, almond-shaped eyes of golden, electric blue, or violet hue. And they also, there were several specialized Orifim strains that were more feline, avian, or cetacean in biological structure. So I'm going to kind of go down that the Orifim felines definitely resembled, they said, more like a white Persian cat species. But again, remember, very tall beings, 12 to 20 feet tall, breatharian, practically see-through beings. I will invite you to look if you read any of the Anton Parks books, he talks about the guardians that were guarding Earth when the Anu were coming to Earth at kind of right around the Luciferian rebellion time. So there were guardians and beings. They were very translucent in nature. They almost seemed like what you would think of Bigfoot, but very tall, very high vibrational. They connected and communicated with all different sentient beings, and they had the ability to move in and out of the dimensional sphere. So they could move from this one into, say, the second harmonic universe, and potentially up into the third harmonic universe, depending on what body form they had. So there was a lot of these Orifim that actually chose to take on aquatic forms. So for those of you that resonate more with water bodies and forms, and these were coming specifically from the Amethyst order, the Braharama Orifim. And many of these beings used sound tones and scalar wave templates to hold the Templar frequencies of the universal structure in order. And you can sense that on a really deep level when you connect with cetaceans or the whale family or many of the dolphin family. When you hear their tonal sounds that you can imagine on higher dimensional levels, on an Orifim level, these beings were sending sound tones out that weren't just holding planet Tara or Gaia together, because think again, this were being seated on the Gaian timeline. They were holding sound tones that were holding the entire universal Templar structure of our 15-dimensional time matrix. So planet to planet could actually communicate with each other through these tonal sounds. So just to know that in the Orifim lineage, the stronger electrical fields, when they did start to take on male or female, the electrical tonals were held more by the male biogenesis forms, and the magnetic energy was held more by the female forms. So we can definitely feel that so much here. So now, as you kind of have a little bit of an understanding of the Orifim, again, we're talking the third harmonic universe and the Gaian timeline. Now, as this is happening, there are still things going on within the universe, obviously, because the Orifim were a genetically created race of beings specifically designed to hold all of the founder races' genetics within them in a purified form. So they could hold the strands of 24 up to 48 strands of DNA. And when they stepped down, we're going to see how they helped to create the next angelic human lineage. So when they were seated onto the Gaian timelines. So the Orifim are connected with Sirius B, Procyon in Canis Minor, Mintaka in Orion, and Gaia. So the Gaia timeline. Now, I will tell you, I've been coming across a lot of Mintakan star seeds lately, which is a really beautiful thing because so high vibrational and so confused to be here on Earth right now, I will tell you. And then seeded in the second harmonic universe, so they were starting to seed down into the second harmonic universe of the Tara timeline. Let's see if I can move this. They were seeded onto, again, Series B, but at a lower frequency and more dense body. Pleiadian region of Alcyone. So Alcyone, remember again, Tara. Altair, Tara, and Tara to begin the angelic human lineage. So this angelic human lineage is what, when you read any of the Voyagers books or any of the material on energetic synthesis, this is really going to be the Tyrannusium experiment is what it's called. So these were the pure angelic race of beings. They were, again, created with the genetics from the metaterrestrials from the fourth and fifth harmonic universe, together with the Lyrans, and holding all of the genetics that we just talked about, because these are all just stepped down codes and genes. So it was as if it was just tinkering and taking the light codes and sound codes, and how could they be put together into forming these different bodies? Well, there were 12 different tribes, if you will, or lineages of these angelic lineages. These 12 Tyrannusium subraces were here: the Brahman, the Drahamin, Atonai, Trinitan, Azerton, the Keltos, Adami, Urantrans, Luri, the Saraz, Nizaktai, and the Melchizedeks. You're going to see that each of these names correlate more with the second harmonic universe, but as they step down, you can already look at these names and see how they look very, very similar to some of the other tribes and races that we're more familiar with on Earth, such as the Celtics, Melchizedeks, and that sort of thing. So when you go into your own records and memories, you can always see what lineages and lines you might resonate with, because a lot of these beings, again, were holders of specific lines of energy, specific codes and genes, and also eventually became specific Stargate guardians and holders of light for particular timelines and areas here on Earth and on different timelines within the universe. So now let's just start to look a little bit about how this is getting digressed a little bit. So what was starting to happen was within these 12 tribes, the Tyrannusium experiment, the first seeding, was holding all 12 strands of DNA packaged, and they were to embody all of these genetics of these 12 races within them. But as time went on, so this actually went pretty well for about 8 million years. But after about 8 million years, other races were starting to visit the Tara system. Other ET races were coming in, infiltrating in, connecting with these different lineages and races. Just to know that the Nephilim and the Anunnaki have been fully moving throughout the universe for millennia of time, because they are one of the primary reasons why the angelic human race was even created in the first place. So through the digression and manipulation by interbreeding with various unrelated ET strands, the genetic code began to break down and fall into disharmony. After about 8 million years into the evolution, the 12 Tyrannusium races became divided into 2 primary racial strains. So this is where we're going to see a huge familiarity for so many of you. They were divided into 2 different strains, the Elanians and the Lumians. Now, we can see how as that has stepped down in vibration and timelines became the Atlanteans and the Lumerians, right? But there's been multiple seedings and multiple timelines of these Atlantean, Lemurian destruction. So this is kind of bringing us back to the remembrance of history has repeated itself way more times than we wanted it to. They lived on a large landmass on Tara called Eden. So all of these beings, even though they started to divide into two racial strains, they all carried the 12 original strands, but both the Alanians and the Lumians started to digress those codes because of the interstellar breeding. Now, the Lumians did tend to stick a little bit more to law of one teachings and consciousness, whereas the Alanians began to really get interested in crystalline technology, planetary plasma fields, harnessing the energy of the core of planets in order to create propulsion systems, weaponry, and more importantly, they were so advanced with their Galactic awareness of the sciences of the universe that they had the ability to begin to move moons, move planets, rearrange the universe. And when you start to rearrange things, if you are not doing it within the harmony of the law of one, you really start to throw things out of alignment. Now, within this particular time in history, what is happening is the Lumians are trying to uphold the law of one, but at this time, they're already aware of a future cataclysm. They had the ability to kind of look into the future, to work timelines, because timelines is just portal mechanics. It's just knowing how to work with stargates, portals, and each portal, think about if you move through a dimension, say from the first harmonic universe to the second harmonic universe, you're actually moving forwards and backwards kind of in time. It's kind of hard for our mind to understand it, but in truth, what's happening is you can move through timelines, through Templar mechanics and scalar mechanics in these planetary spheres. So what was happening is the Alunians were beginning to want to take over the landmass and the land territory where the Lumians were. And so the Syrian Council appointed a new group to kind of keep an eye on the Alanians. What they were trying to do was to basically rein them in, tell them, you know, they had to abide by universal laws. And so now you can imagine at this point in time in history, there are councils all over the place. There's planetary systems all over the place. We are talking about the Gaia timeline that is connected with Tara and Earth. But you have beings that are residing in Sirius, in Canis Major. You have beings that are still in the Lyra constellation, from Vega, from the Aramatena area, actually from Avion area. You have beings from all of these other places. Orion, at this time, Orion has multiple factions going on simultaneously. You have some of the highest vibrational councils existing within Orion, and at the same time, you also have the Adedicron races, the regressive Anu Syrian races that have created their own factions within the Orion system. So we'll just call them like the Belial Sons and the Black Suns and all of these beings that are in Orion. And a lot of the energy is starting to focus in on this angelic race and this Tyrannusium project that's happening. And the Anu, the fallen angelics, if you will, the Anu Seraphim and these Nephilim races are not wanting this race. Basically, there is an entire kind of pulse to destroy this race and to also take over the land or the territory. So this is where you have a lot of mixed energy that is within the Pleiadian constellation and all of the hundreds of different planetary systems and different races that are in there. You can imagine in Lyra, you got everything from reptilian beings to cetacean beings, aquatic beings, you got avian beings, you have mantis beings, insectoid beings, you have, and within all of these races, you have many of them that are benevolent, upholding the law of one, and then mixed genetics, where many of those races have now gone into digression and are in the rebellion forces. So right here, we have a time when the Atlanteans are using crystal technology and using planetary energy and trying to take over Mu. So here's what's happening is the Lumian race foresaw this cataclysm. So they petitioned the Elohim and the Syrian Council again, and they asked for help. And what happened is there was a Council of Mu that was created. And this Council of Mu did something really interesting. What they did is they took the beings from the Tyrannosaurus races, so these angelic human races, they took the ones that held the Ceres lineage. So if you go back and you look at the 12 tribes here, they took this one, the one that held the Ceres lineage within them, which is holding the Seraphim lineage in there. And what they did is they interbred Elohim genetics in DNA directly in with these Lumians carrying the Ceres Tyrannosaurus gene codes. So this is an infusion of energy that came. So you could think if you were looking at your starseed lineage, that this would have been the time, if you were in Lyra, that you would have seen as an opportunity to infuse energy into your sacred project that you were working on, these beautiful angelic human race that you were creating. Now imagine this angelic human race was specifically designed not only to be kind of a genetic vehicle to help with the restoration of the planet, because there were beings that knew of the future timelines, but more predominantly, this is a race that was created to be the guardians of Tara. They were just meant to be guardians of planetary bodies. So it just comes back to a reminder that most bodies, most races are many times genetically connected to planetary bodies and systems, just to be guardians, to be a part of it, to uphold the law of one, to uphold the sacred scalar mechanics of that planetary body, to sing to it, to love it, to hold it, all of that great energy. So basically, a new kind of race was created from this genetic infusion from the Elohim, and this new race was called the Ceres, which was a purified, more of a purified strain of Lumian energy on Tara. And later, this kind of happened again, and this beings in this race became known as the Ceres with an S. So it's a little bit different. And so there's a lot of these beings that have interacted specifically with Earth humans here in the first harmonic universe. So you could almost think of these beings as the angelics, a lot of the angels that people connect with, the angelic races. So this happened again to help rebuild and purify a lot of the digression and distortion in the gene codes that was happening through this angelic human race. This race later became known as the Tyrannites. I want to specifically kind of bring your energy to this, because this is where we're going to start to tap into what are the halls of Amenti. So again, remember, we have the 12 sacred tribes. Digression happened. The Elohim intervened again. So the Elohim were created by the high, like fourth harmonic universe level Lyrans. The Elohim are guardians. And they infused their sacred, purified gene codes from the third harmonic universe into this angelic lineage again. But they did it through this Ceres race of Lumians. So think of it more from the Lumerian race line. And when they did this, this race later became known as the Tyrannites, and these eventually became known as the Paladorians. Paladorians are the halls of Amenti. The halls of Amenti are a living, conscious race of beings that stepped their vibration into a pre-matter form in order to hold sacred scalar mechanics and sacred pure blueprint genetics for the restoration of all fallen races and beings so that they could have a way back home. Take a breath on that one, because it's really quite a journey that we have been on. So as we look at this, we're going to now kind of start to step into, I'm not going to quite step into the Egyptian timeline quite yet. We're going to step into kind of the energy with Mu. So Mu was a place on Tara, and what was happening as these Urantites, which you could again remember as the Ceres, started to become aware of future timelines where a cataclysm was going to happen. So as the Elunians were fighting, as the Orion factions were fighting, as the different fallen angelics, if you will, the Anu Seraphim, the Udedicron races, the Dragon Moth races, there's so many different ones that started to go into digressive races. As they started to vie for the land of Tara, there was an awareness that a cataclysm was coming. So many of the Luminite races, the Lumian races, actually went into the inner earth of Tara. Sounds familiar, right? So as they went into the inner earth, many of the beings evacuated Tara and went to other planetary systems where they started to intermingle with other races. So many of them would have gone to other planetary places in the Pleiades, or maybe Lyra, or Sirius, or even Orion. Many of these races would go to other places in order to be able to be safe from this cataclysm. But many of them went in to the inner earth. So what happened is basically, as the Elunians were tinkering with the sacred geometry of the planet, not listening to the Syrian Council, at this point, the Templar Solar faction that was put to keep an eye on the Elunians were actually digressive beings who were also participating in the destruction of Tara. And these Templar Solar initiates were working with the Elunians to misuse the power from Tara's primary core. They didn't care what they were doing to the planet. They wanted to take it for themselves. They wanted the landmass where the Lumians were. They just wanted it. They wanted it. They wanted it, and they didn't care about what was happening to the sacred energy of the planetary body. So what happened is this started to create, as the planet's core started to heat up from them tapping into it, it created a chain reaction of implosions that started to destroy Tara's planetary grid. And part of her body, her sacred grid, was blown apart and fragmented. And it became detached from the entire morphogenetic field of her body, of the planet. So imagine it got destructed and pieces of her went flying out. So the entire planet suffered multiple effects from this pole reversal. The planet actually stood still for multiple days. So the few surviving Terran races on the planet had retreated permanently into the interplanetary body for probably about a 10,000 year period, because Tara needed to actually reheal itself. But because portions of that body got destroyed, it lost its morphogenetic field, it lost its energy structures, and it became ripped apart from the main planetary grid of the third harmonic universe. So when that happened, Tara lost its connection to Gaia. It lost its connection to its higher elevated dimensional pair. So now all of Tara had no access to ascension back into Gaian timelines. So in essence, you have a rip and a tear in the sacred body of the universe where one major chakra area, if you will, has lost full communication and access to its higher body. So now within Tara, it only had access up into the 6th dimension because it couldn't move into the 3rd harmonic universe anymore. It lost its access to 7, 8, and 9. Now, when this happened, Tara could not reemerge with the energy of the grid, and therefore it became trapped in time. So if we don't have access all the way back up again, guess what? Our ascension stops. We have nowhere to go. Kind of like we've been trapped down here in first harmonic universe for a while. Well, this is exactly the same. Tara got stopped in her tracks from her ability to connect to the life force of the universe. And so therefore what happened is Tara's vibration began to rapidly fall. Her dimensional frequencies lost access to the living light energy. Therefore, it's like a candle light that her light started going really dim. Now, the fragments that came off of Tara when she got exploded, those got sucked into the solar body. They were sucked into the black hole of the center of the sun that was near Tara. And when that happened, they went through the black hole, and guess where they emerged? They literally fell through the black hole into the first harmonic universe. So when you hear about the fall, it's a literal fall that happened. The parts that were supposed to be in the second harmonic universe literally fell. And they reemerged into this galaxy, if you will, a lower dimensional galaxy within the first harmonic universe. And when they emerged here, they emerged really as gaseous substance. So it isn't like our solar system didn't just automatically pop into place. It took a while for her body parts to form spheres. And so as we can become aware of the body parts of Tara that are now our solar system, many of these body parts, you can imagine, also had soul fragments to them from the second harmonic universe. They also had soul fragments to them because even though beings knew the catastrophe was coming, not all lives were spared. So now we have many Taran souls from the Pleiadian area, the Pleiadian constellation, that were radiated, fragmented, lost in time and space, and fallen into a lower vibrational frequency, and without body, without an ascension plan, without a way to get out of here. They were literally lost fragments of soul, lost body parts. And so now you can imagine from this place, there is a rescue mission. We're going to actually go backwards in time to talk about this part in time, because this is the cataclysm that was known about that was going to happen. So prior to this happening, the Urturanites, so the Ceres the Ceres lineage that got reinfused with that Elohim purified genetics and codes and bloodline, chose, just to really feel that, they chose to create sacred time spheres, if you will, the sacred spheres of Amenti. So they were very skilled at time portal mechanics, and the Syrian Council, along with the Elohim and the second harmonic universe Pleiadians, assisted these beings with what is called the Covenant of Palador. Now, it is the Covenant of Palador that is a rescue mission for the Taran souls that are here in the first harmonic universe. And what it is it was an agreement between Syrians, Pleiadians, these Ceres beings that were known as the Terranates, the Elohim Lyrans, and Ceres beings, Lumians, and Elanians. So all of these benevolent beings and races from these genetics that were still holding law of one ethics came together. And what they did is they joined their consciousness, working together with the Brennau Rishi. So remember the gestalts, the primal plasma fields of light, if you will, the gold ray, the blue ray, and the magenta ray. As they worked with these beings of pure consciousness, the Paladorians created a new energy sphere of consciousness. Now, at this time also, this is where we start to get assistance from a metagalactic race of beings. So this would be like coming from our mother universe. And this entity was known as Ra, or the Ra Confederacy. And you can see how many different tie-ins within our history, within Egyptian, within the Law of One teachings, within the Venusian, where all of these connections, right, are connected with this Ra energy, R-A, Ra Confederacy. And so all of these primary identity gestalts worked together within the Ra Confederacy. And as they did this, I'm just kind of going to move forward a little bit, but what they did is they merged into a gestalt energy of consciousness. So the best way I can say is that as a consciousness, high vibrational fields, they worked with this higher metagalactic core consciousness and merged all of their blueprints, their light tones, their sound codes, their genetics together into an energy field of consciousness, which now served as a morphogenetic field. And this morphogenetic field held all of the 12-strand DNA of the Tyrannosaurus race prototypes. So the original 12 tribes, it held all of these genetics, these sacred genetics in there. And this morphogenetic field held all of the Keylontic time codes. So these were electrotonal time frequencies. And they basically were able to create a sphere that when all of this consciousness came together, as their frequencies emanated through the 4th and 5th dimensional bands. So again, they were creating an energy to help create a stair-step process to get out of the first harmonic universe. So first harmonic universe, you're stuck in dimensions 1, 2, and 3. So the halls of Amenti, these Paladorian beings that all joined their consciousness together, became a morphogenetic field. This race of beings became like pure stargates of morphogenetic patterning, so that beings in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd densities could then move through the stargates as they started to rehabilitate their DNA strands. And when you would go through these stargates, or the halls of Amenti, because they turned into 5 spheres holding the genetics for 5 cloister races. And when they did that, when you would pass through them, you had to get your body to a level that you could match the blue flame. So the blue flame, again, was significant of the color that the spheres of Amenti, these Paladorian beings, were holding. These beings basically became the ascension plan for all of the fallen souls of Tara. So as you can imagine this, now we're talking about an ability for races to come into creation and have a way out of this earth. Now, we're just kind of move a little bit because this is kind of a bit right now, but what I do want to touch on is that this process was slow and arduous. So the angelic human race had to be seeded once again. We've gone through multiple seedings, and this time it had to be seeded in the first harmonic universe and on Earth. And these are where the 12 tribes became the 12 races became the 12 tribes. So we'll explore that in another time. But these 12 tribes held all of the different strands. And so what happened is race after race would come in and hold a slow rehabilitation process, because we were trying to build back up to 12-strand DNA. So the first seedings and races that were coming through were holding the first strands of DNA. And then they had to then be able to hold, the next ones had to hold the second strand of DNA and rehabilitate that. And then it was about seeding again and coming in and holding the third strand of DNA and beginning to be able, so these are the cloister races, each holding a little bit, and each one had to build on the one before and grab that activated DNA strand and then take it forward. It was a very slow genetic process going through multiple lifetimes and lineages of races of beings, forms, in order to rehabilitate this. So it was a lot of guardian races. So now you have the beings from Sirius, the Pleiades, you have all of these beings who have invested their genetics in this angelic human form, who are nursing it along and promoting the rehabilitation. Why is this important? Because remember, this whole place was filled with lost souls and fragments from the second harmonic universe in Tara. Until the lost parts of Tara could be returned back home, Tara is in a destruction pattern. It cannot connect again to Gaia. And so this is where we see the investment of many races, many guardian races who assist us, because they are assisting this project, this rehabilitation project that has been happening. And as it happens, this is where we can know, yes, many of the species and races from other planetary systems do have an investment, of course, because there's timelines that are frozen stuck until we rise our vibration to a particular level in order to reconnect these portals and stargates back online again. Now, I want to just touch a little bit into the Egyptian timeline, and we'll go further into history, into this a little bit more, but I really wanted to share with you guys the creation of the halls of Amenti, who they really are, and what their purpose has been, and also how that is connected to our sacred angelic lineage that we hold within our forms and our bodies. And why our lineage is so sacred, because remember, when a lot of ET races started to intermingle and interbreed with the sacred genetics that were creating the Orifim sacred lineage and into these angelic Tyrannosaurus races, guess what happened? Digression. We've been seeing that a lot too with Earth. There's still a lot of infiltration, a lot of other species that try to come in to take the genetics, to splice it, to again try to rehabilitate their forms. And we have to honor the sacred mechanics of our universe, that there are going to be species that just need to elevate their own consciousness within their own level, and they may not be able to fully ascend their soul back through an angelic form, but that they can start to choose higher consciousness, so that when their soul leaves their body, they have access to reincarnate into another either dimensional frequency, planetary system, or body that is going to assist them into really returning on that stair-step process back home. That we want to honor how sacred genetics and codes are, that the more they get tinkered with, we can I don't know why, but I really like to use the canine species as an example, because you can see so many digressive genes that start to happen in overbreeding, in manipulating races, and tinkering with genetics that shouldn't be tinkered with. And therefore, you can see where some work, some don't. Now, within this, it's important to know that the halls of Amenti have been sacredly kept a secret prior to their creation, during their creation, and for the majority of the time, they were protected. That is why you would know them as having to go through initiations and the secrets, and all of this is because here's why. If just any Tauran soul that was fragmented here went through the halls of Amenti, but they had not gone through the entire purification process. These halls of Amenti were stargates. You would go through them and you would emerge on another planet, on another timeline. You would emerge back on Tara, right? You would emerge into these other places that would allow your soul now access out of the first harmonic universe and into the next timeline, so that you could then wait there and work through your life cycles until the reconnection happened. Now, what was happening is there were Tauran souls that were getting through that were not purified. And so therefore, they were starting to cause digression and aggression on the Tauran second harmonic universe timeline. So these halls of Amenti had to be moved. Many of them, they were moved off planet, they were moved off Earth, they were moved to be protected. So these Paladorians, this Paladorian covenant, the Amenti, had to be moved in order to protect the Tauran in the second harmonic universe timeline, because too many digressive genetic codes were getting up into the higher timeline and creating distortion, manipulation in the gene codes again, which again, we look at it as aggression, digression, anti-law of one, anti-laws of the universe thinking, and that kinds of things. So here, just to kind of speed through again, this is where a lot of the distortion has come from on our planetary sphere, and why there were future covenants that were put into place to kind of lock the first harmonic universe down. So whatever Tauran fragmented souls were stuck here, whatever of us that came in to be part of the rehabilitation plan or to help, guess what? We came in, and we came in for the cycle. We came in and said, man, I know that if I go in, I'm going in for the long haul, because I'm there to see it through to the end. So now I want to just tie in a couple more slides for you, just two more, because I know this is a lot. So the first Egyptians on Earth were descendants of the Seraphim avian races that were one of the 7 root races from the second harmonic universe that later became distorted through the Anunnaki hybridization programs that were interbreeding with the Nephilim. As a result, these genetic distortions impacted the original genetic template of the entire Seraphim morphogenetic imprint. The Ra Confederacy, under the Aton group, took a guardianship role to help protect these race lines and genetic records by also creating an advanced genetic strain of Serez Egyptians that were the pharaonic royal lines within the Egyptian culture. So during the cycle of the Melchizedek hosting, the cloister race of the Melchizedeks integrated with the Egyptian genetic lineages, giving them the most advanced and diversified genetics in order to redirect the Egyptian culture back to the practices of the Law of One. These teachings had been lost due to several Anunnaki hybridization attempts that were made with the Egyptian culture. The Egyptian races had guardianship and control over the Ark of the Covenant and Inner Earth Gateway, and the Anunnaki formed their resistance in order to gain control over access to them and the soul portal located there. So this kind of leads us again to another catastrophe that happened, similar to the Alunians on Tara, but we had the explosions of the Atlantean cataclysm. And when this happened, guess what? Many retreated underground into the inner earth. History repeats itself. Many of these groups were taken from the Atlantean colonies to be resettled in Egypt. And they also brought their specific technological knowledge to this. So the Egyptian mystery schools were formed by the blue flame Melchizedeks that carried the higher genetics, which allowed them to pass through the blue flame gateway, which became known as the pearly gates leading into the heavenly realms. So in order to pass again through the halls of Amenti, you had to get your body, your initiatory body, to a particular vibration and frequency. You had to have done the work to purify your genetics. You had to hold the right genetics within you. So remember these 5 covenants, these 5 groups that came through. I didn't go into detail with them. We will at another time just because it's a lot. But it's the Urantians were the first group that came through holding the 2nd strand DNA. Then we had Brown Noah, which held the 3rd strand DNA. Then the Hebrew came in next as the next seeding to rehabilitate the 4th strand. And then the Melchizedeks were the 5th cloister race that held the 5th strand. And the Uniceti were another race after that are to hold the 6th strand of DNA. Now, each of these, you had to get your vibration up to a particular level. And when you did, it was as if you became like the blue flame in order to pass through these halls of Amenti to get to these, to move to other harmonic universes or frequencies. Now, when that happened, this is literally where the biblical term going through the pearly gates comes through to get to the higher realms. So when the guardian Yeshua, which many know as Jesus, but this would be the 12th dimensional Yeshua, because there were 3 Christs. When the guardian Yeshua returned from his time studying in Eastern mystical teachings, he went to Giza in order to be initiated into the mystery schools and practice the ascension rites of the blue flame Melchizedeks. So I'm pretty much going to stop with that this evening. But I do want to tie in the blue flame Melchizedeks was the place that I wanted to get to today, because the Melchizedek order, the blue flame Melchizedek specifically, just to know the Melchizedek order has been distorted. Just know that every lineage has been distorted in some ways. So there are Toth influenced Melchizedeks that have digressive factions to them. But the blue flame Melchizedeks have been holding the sacred knowledge, the sacred lineage, the sacred seraphim, genetics, and assisting humanity. Many of them merged into the inner earth. So now we're connecting with those of us that really resonate with the inner earth beings. Specifically, places like Mount Shasta are places where blue flame Melchizedeks are, so there is, again, all over the inner earth, there are many of these sacred lineages, and they may go by other names, but what we are looking at is bloodline lineages and how this history has taken place for us. So with that, that is basically the energy that I wanted to share with this, and that really just to know that during these times, all of this history that has happened on Earth, that the number one thing that has been the highest commodity, other than crystals and planetary resources and minerals, is genetics and sacred blood lineages. We come from a sacred lineage of the founder races. We come from sacred Lyran races, Elohim races that migrated to many planetary systems. They migrated to the Sirius star system, to the Pleiades, to all of these different planetary planetary places that we have connections from. There's high vibrational connections to the Orion system, to the Alpha Centauri system, to all of these different constellations. Think of this. There's 12 tribes. In our constellation wheel, when we look at our astrological wheel, there's 12 houses, there's 12 signs, there's 12 major constellations and alignments that we're looking at. When the Hathors were teaching the wisdom, they taught much of the wisdom again through the astrological alignments, the astrological wheel, star placements, stargates, where you travel, how you travel, because again, remember, the body of the universe just replicates itself, micro, macro, over and over. So when you know your stargates, you know where you've traveled, you become aware of your star lineage, you become aware of your star history, you become aware you are, and you become aware of the multiple different things you've dealt with in humanity's history and timelines. And therefore, this helps us, on a nutshell, to pull out of the everyday small things. So the Guardians want to just full circle this around right now and said, remember when we started this whole talk this evening, just that conversation about look back to your life in this lifetime. If you look back to the you that was born and every step you walked in this life, and how here you are. And you can celebrate who you are in this very moment. And all that you walk through, yes, it wasn't easy. So now when we turn around and we look at our galactic history, all that we walked through has not been easy, but here we are. The stargates are aligning. The solar rishi are returning. The body of mother is restoring. This is what we're feeling. This is why it's so hard to be in our body right now, because our soul and our spirit is going, oh my God, the stargates are opening up. Let's go home. Finally, we did it. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So this is what's really happening, is our dormant DNA and gene codes are reconnecting again. We're coming online. We're having the ability to move through the stargates again. We're being welcomed back home by many of our star races, because our distortions are starting to get cleaned up. So we're not bringing these viruses and bacteria anymore. The more we focus on our spiritual hygiene, the more we will create all of that energy to be able to be the restoration plan and the restoration body that we came here to be. This is how special we are. We are bringing all of our family back home. We are reconnecting the body of mother. We are connecting with all of our soul families again. And so you can just take a few deep breaths in this moment. And they're asking us to step into our emerald heart, to bring the sacred knowledge to completion today. Step into your emerald heart. And from your emerald heart, that as you drop through the land that you are guarding right now, connect to the halls of Amenti. And now you have an inner awareness of this gestalt of beings, this consciousness that completely banded together, dedicated their lives, dedicated their purpose, dedicated their entire existence to being a stargate so that we could come back home. And as you just feel that tremendous amount of love, they ask us and they remind us that you too are a stargate. You too have chosen to be a stargate, to welcome people, welcome souls, welcome them back home. That whatever suffering you may have ever experienced in all of your lifetimes. Remember what a gift you are. And the more you align yourself to remembering that, everything we've ever worried about, everything we've ever fought against, everything we thought was just so horrible, just doesn't seem that big of a deal anymore. So as you drop in, just connect with your family. That all you have to do is be within, connect with the Paladorians. Connect with the Elohim. Connect with your stargates, your portals, your family. And all you need to do is sit with the highest spiritual integrity to hold yourself open. And just being in that light, that vibration, and that frequency automatically changes. It flips on, switches in your gene codes. That's all you need to do is just be with it. And just by being with it, you become the change. You become the Stargate. You become the restoration plan. So as we all drop in, they say one more breath. You are so loved. You are so honored. You are so revered. Your sacrifices across the timelines and the lifetimes that you have implemented into holding this Christos mission, into restoring the universal body of Mother, that it is your turn and your time, that as you hold this energy, to hold out your hands and to allow yourself to be loved, allow yourself to be pampered, allow yourself to be nurtured, loved. Take it into earth. Take it into this body. Remember, this body is Tara. All of it, all of it, all of it. And as we bring it home, that as it connects back home, that it gets to now be connected again with Gaia. We all have that experience of being the prodigal son that gets to come back home. So with so much love, I thank you so much for sharing this energy with me this evening. It is such an honor to share this in whatever way it resonates for you.